Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Nathan Chaney, and I am your host for the day. And actually, today we're going to be working on our specific series called Future Voices of Supply Chain. And we're talking to a couple of supply chain grads that are at App State right now. They're phoning it in from Boone. We're going to talk a little bit about what got them interested in supply chain, what kind of experience they've had in school, studying operations, logistics, supply chain, you name it, and then just kind of pick their brains on what they want to be doing in the future, what they see themselves doing with their degrees. So welcome, Parker and Caleb, to the podcast. Let's maybe go Caleb. C comes first. So Caleb, can you take a minute and just kind of tell us a little about yourself, where you're from, and kind of how you got into studying supply chain?
Sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me. My name is Caleb Divelbiss. I currently live in Boone, North Carolina, State University, studying supply chain management. I actually will say it wasn't until a few years ago that I really found out what supply chain was. Growing up, I kind of took on an entrepreneurial state of mind and did a lot of yard work, started businesses of that sort. Started my first business at 17 called Camel City Hauling and Landscaping with my best friend. Got leaves, we'll blow it. Got trash, we'll throw it. Got grass, we'll mow it. And ever since then, I kind of just took that sort of work ethic I learned from there and ran with it into other pursuits. The next year, I started a labor aggregation business called Divelbiss. And it was actually there I ran into COVID because it was I ran into supply chain because it was during COVID. And our job was to go and help events and venues setting up for events unload tractor trailers full of walls, valances, and material and things needed to set up the venue. Well, during COVID, a lot of trucks were late. A lot of ships were late. The trucks were at the ports and couldn't get what they needed, so therefore deliveries were late. Therefore, we couldn't always do our job on schedule. So I went from kind of that perspective of, oh, I can do all the manual labor and still make money to there's a lot more opportunity in figuring out how to get things to where they need to go. And that kind of pushed me in the direction of supply chain. So I started studying it, pursued an internship last summer with Ferguson Enterprise, had a great job, met a lot of incredible leaders that kind of walked me through the industry beyond a book. And since then, I'm now very grateful to be the president of Appalachian Supply Chain Club, where I get to work with kids my age that are looking to pursue a role in this industry that is ever growing and ever changing, and now more than ever presents more opportunity. So that's kind of my rundown.
I admire the entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you.
I'm kind of in that chapter of my career in life right now as well, and it's for you to have jumped in at such an early age is pretty awesome. So maybe we can unpack that a little bit more and get some more learnings here on the pod. Parker, you're up. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how we got to kind of having this conversation here today.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. My name is Parker Westbrook, also a supply chain major here at App State. So I'm currently a sophomore. What got me into the supply chain major was probably due to my work experience. So I worked at Ontic Engineering and Manufacturing Incorporated. That was in Creedmoor, North Carolina. And I started out in their warehouse. I was a materials parts mover. I did a lot of different tasks. Ended up holding a couple of different roles, one customer facing and then one planning. And I got a very hands-on experience with both the doers and then also the managers of how the business functions. It was an aerospace component manufacturer, and I was lucky enough because it was a relatively small company when I first joined. It was growing around 300%. It still is, I believe. And needless to say, there's tons of opportunity. So what really sold the supply chain major for me was in my production planning role. I really liked asking questions, almost too many questions. But that's how I figured things out. And it got to the point where I wanted to know the inner workings of the software and how it chooses to prioritize our decisions that our business uses to make multiple millions of dollars worth of decisions on a daily basis. And that was the one that sold me. The other thing that sold me was also, it was very difficult for us to keep up with vendors where we would send something out for outside processing. We had I don't want to say we had no idea. We didn't have an established, proven process that helped the business communicate effectively. And that was another thing that I knew was important in the logistics world and the supply chain world. So that's how I ended up as a supply chain major here.
Let's talk about Parker. Maybe back up a second. So Caleb kind of talked about his teenage years, growing up and doing some things. What were you kind of keeping yourself busy with back in your junior high school days?
Yeah. So ironically enough, I had a landscaping business as well that I ran with my father. It was called West Cary Lawn Care. Um, that was my first introduction into high school. I believe I was a freshman, over the summers mowing yards. And my dad helped me set up an LLC for it, taught me how to invest it. So once I make some money, how do I start saving retirement at the ripe age of 14? So that was like how I spent my summers. I ended up going from a public high school, my underclassmen years, to a private high school, Hargrave Military Academy. Ended up being student leadership, cadet leadership there. That in itself was probably its own job. You eat, sleep, and breathe Hargrave is how I would phrase that. So I was Bravo Company Commander there. I had 32 cadets under me, and that really taught me how leadership works, especially when you're 18 years old now and trying to tell post grads, hey, so you have to go clean something that is not very pleasant. That's kind of how I spent my high school years, was more so on the military aspect of things, even though I wasn't JROTC.
Gotcha. Well, I think we could just establish it right here on this call that lawn mowing businesses. I spent a number of summers doing that myself growing up. So clearly, this is maybe on a career trajectory sort of track. All you lawn care folks out there, you might mess up and find yourself in logistics and supply chain one day. So, but not a bad deal. Much better than weed eating, blowing, and mowing. Caleb, I loved your little phrase that you shared a while ago. If you've got grass, we'll mow it. We've got that's pretty classy.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe App State itself. Like you all, did you have some choices? When thinking about where to go to school. What kind of drew you to App State other than the bright yellow colors, I guess. Caleb, I'll kick that one over to you first.
So interesting. I guess sometimes when you're 17, 18 years old, you don't really have the concept of doing two things efficiently. So I put a lot of effort into mowing, blowing, and throwing, and not so much into studying. And so I actually got denied from App State my first year. My girlfriend of the time was coming here, and I really wanted to come here as well. I had some buddies coming here, so I applied, and then I got the X back. But one of the best qualities you learn through entrepreneurship is kind of that trial by fire and perseverance. You don't take no for an answer. And so I didn't. I contacted the admissions lady at the time and set up calls with her, established a relationship with her, and slowly she worked with me, and I was able to get my way into App State that fall 2021. So that was a really cool opportunity, and it was pretty cool. App State has a way of, regardless of how you did in high school, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what you do or think you may want to, there's a place for you here, and they'll make sure you find it. And so, I came in my first year kind of in the belief of I don't belong here. And then by my second semester, freshman year, I joined the honors college. So, and it was kind of all she wrote from there. So I can't say enough good things about this university.
Awesome. But you kind of grew up more in the middle of the country, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the Midwest. So I moved to North Carolina when I was 13. But I grew up in Missouri.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just drove through St. Louis I just visited St. Louis for the first time in my whole life a couple weeks ago. And that arch is so humongous. It like postcards and pictures don't quite do it justice.
So I
Um,
actually went up in it. I've seen it before, but I went up in it for the first time ever 4 months ago now. So
all right. All right.
yeah.
Parker, let's talk a little about your, how you arrived at selecting App State.
Yeah. So I graduated from Hargrave Military Academy in 2021. That was like my first round of applications. I kind of had a false start with college and ended up working. But I did get into multiple schools. I predominantly focused on North Carolina. I also pursued ROTC scholarships with the Army. And I was awarded a 3-year scholarship at a couple different schools. But again, I ended up working. So by the time that I realized, hey, I need to take the education piece seriously, and was willing to put forth all of my effort to make sure that that would happen, it was summer 2023. Actually, it was December 2022, I guess is what we'll put it. And I was like, I need to go ahead and start working on applications now. And I remember App State being very personable, and that was something that sold it for me, because at a public high school, for me, I felt like I was just a number. I think there were 3,600 students at the time at that school, so not really an individualized education. And then at Hargrave, I mean, I can remember being in a class of 3 at my smallest, so it was complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And what I like about App State is one of the things I was worried about is, hey, will I even be able to bring a car here? Because I own my car, and I got to find a place to live, and also I want to go to school, that kind of thing. And App State's like, you can almost call any department and get somebody on the phone who cares about you specifically, instead of just, do you meet the requirements, or it's a very different, more individual experience. And that's why I chose App State.
Excellent. Excellent. I appreciate sort of painting the full picture there of kind of coming around to that decision. Let's maybe zoom in on today and the kinds of things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Maybe let's just talk about a supply chain class or an operations-based class that what's your favorite topic to talk about, in this line of work these days? Maybe you can refer to a class or something that you've learned recently.
Sure.
You want to take it? Go for it, Parker.
Sure. I would almost argue. So I'm knocking out all my gen eds right now because I'm still an underclassman. So I'm only in one supply chain major class currently, and it's my first one. But I will say, in my pipeline to get the supply chain major, I have taken business law, and then I'm currently taking risk management and insurance, which is by the same professor. He's an attorney, so it's laid out very similarly. He's very focused on the words that he chooses to use, and I think that those are most engaging because it leaves me with more questions at the end of the class. And the reason is because I operate in a very regulated industry, or have operated in, regulated industries. And a lot of the content that's covered is pretty general, I'll be honest. But when it comes to things like intellectual property rights, supply chain definitely deals with a lot of intellectual property rights. And although it's not specific to my major, that's not what the class's intent was. It helped me connect the dots between my personal experiences in the past with work, and then also, oh hey, I did not know that that's why this was from a legal perspective when I'm in class.
Why you had to operate the way you did, and it starts to click. Let's talk a little bit about when you were a material handler, and that sort of experience, and what you're learning now in your first supply chain class. Have there been any connection of dots between, kind of the work that you were doing in a warehouse, in a dock, procurement, buying, all that sort of planning, and what you're learning in class? Any kind of aha moments that have happened there?
Um, not not a ton,
Okay.
but one thing that is interesting is um, the work experience that I have was very like subject matter expert specific, one thing, and then that's it. But it's cool to see from the class side of that picture, um, how it fits into business models that aren't necessarily specific to the aerospace industry. And what I mean by that is like, for example, um, I'm used to there's only one way to do something, or there's only, a set, like a finite amount of options in order to pursue what to do with these materials and how it works. And in class, that's not necessarily how we're taught to view the situation from the start. It's more so look at the full picture, simplify the process. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. That's probably been the biggest aha moment, if you will, of the class connection with the whole material handler. And
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I kind of like supply chain and logistics is it's a little bit like math in that there's multiple ways to solve the problem. Yes, you may have your standard SOP of the way your company does it and has historically done it or something like that, but there's actually like 5 different ways to accomplish that to get the
absolutely.
goal. And what you're learning in class right now is undoubtedly the different frameworks and different ways you can go about solving that problem. So that's cool. You're able to take your kind of like single blade knife that you maybe were used to, and now you're turning it a little more into a multifunction Swiss Army knife. Caleb, question over to you about class, kind of applying what you've learned. Any favorite topic or subject or anything like that?
Sure. Business law, actually, great class. Loved that class. I will say, supply chain specific, from what I learned from the internship, I actually feel like the knowledge I gained from the supply chain club, hearing other companies come in and talk about their operations, has been the most beneficial. Reason being is because in a lot of courses, not all, but a lot of courses, you cover a vast amount of information, but it's from a textbook or a PowerPoint. It's often standard and conceptual. Whereas, when you go to a company, you can know this, that, and the other thing, but not how they do it. They may use different software, they may use different processes. So there's always going to be training involved there. But when you hear a bunch of other different companies talk about those concepts and how they actually roll them out, then you get more of an understanding, and it's easier to piece together differences between, technologies to carry out integrated planning or to carry out transportation processes or procurement and etc. One class I am very fond of right now, especially, is supply chain technology. And the course is actually taught, it's not taught based off a lecture or a textbook. Each student picks 2 topics and they have to do a presentation and a paper on it. And so one of my topics I did was smart sensors for automation and track inspection industry, train track industry, but train inspection. And one of the cool things it did is you can take things like LiDAR or triangulational scanners. I'll talk on triangulational scanners because they're pretty cool. So basically, they can take geometric measures between like train tracks and they can tell warping. And one of the cool things they do is they're clipped onto the train, so they're completely automated. And you can have someone sitting 10 miles away in a control center. And the triangulational scanners compiles those geometric measures into PNGs and sends it to the control center so you can open it from a MacBook. And then from there, they're able to get all of this data dynamically. It's quick, it's easily accessible. And then you have things like drones, where you can't get into a tight crack to inspect a part of the track, but a drone can. And basically, what this allows is instead of a train going to send out a delivery and then finding the problem and then the track portion having to be shut down and maintenance having to be done, dynamic inspections allow for maintenance to be done before the problem becomes an actual problem and on a schedule that allows efficiency for everyone, upstream suppliers, downstream distributors, and the middleman. And that's been pretty cool. And I wouldn't have learned that had it been textbook style.
Right, right. When I was in school, my favorite part of every class was pretty much when outside speakers would come in, talk about the real nuts and bolts of what they do. And I still remember some of those conversations even till today. They have that
Mm.
much of an impact. And then talking about drones, I was scrolling through LinkedIn the other day, and I came across, a young, I think they were still in school, but their day job was a drone operator for BNSF. And I read through like what their job duties was, and it was scanning and operating and checking out tracks and making sure everything was good. And I think that was the first like professional person on LinkedIn that I'd ever seen that was their job was drone operator. I thought it was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit going forward. Like what does the next year or two look like for you all? And if you want to kind of like put your telescope on and look further into the future, let's talk a little bit about short term, near term, long term. What do y'all see out ahead of you? Whoever wants to go first.
Parker, do you want it or do you want me to take it?
Um, I guess I'll take it. So for me, I guess short term, one thing that I have found useful is to kind of always have on the back of my mind, you know, the career path that I'd like to pursue. I would like to stay in the aviation industry and the defense industries. Um, and a big part of that is they begin recruitment almost a year in advance. And if it's government affiliated, sometimes even sooner than that. And for me, the near future starts now by, keeping up with everybody, maintaining good connections. One of the biggest benefits to working before is I do have some connections. And I will say a lot of folks assume that they don't start in the aerospace industry without an advanced degree of some sort, when in fact that's really not the case. So one of the things that I've been looking towards for future internships and that kind of thing is, hey, it's okay if I don't know everything. You're not supposed to know everything. Um, Go out and learn about, you know, what does it look like on the public sector versus the private sector? What's the difference between the two? So that's kind of what I'll be navigating for internships this upcoming summer.
What does graduation time look like for you, and what do you think you might want to be doing in the long run?
Yeah,
Long run.
so graduation timeline is around May 2027 for me. I am hoping that beyond that point, I will have the opportunity to work for a major aerospace manufacturer of some kind. Um, it is my goal to kind of diversify my experiences at those companies while I'm there. One of the things that is super beneficial to both the company and both yourself as a young professional is to just feed what they give you, and there is a lot to be learned. One department functions completely different than another. I'm hoping to take these experiences. Who knows? I might be interested in pursuing a master's. I might decide, hey, I'd like to create my own Part 145 repair station, which is a aftermarket support for airplanes. There's really no telling. I would like to have a couple of different mainstream experiences in the private sector, though. That's my kind of developing long-term goal.
All right, all right. I think you seem to be you're onto something there. I think you've got a good roadmap planned out for yourself. The one thing that I usually try to stress to folks that are in kind of like at your part of their education and their career is even though you may, and I think you're already onto this, is that you may be specializing in something like supply chain or logistics today. As you grow and mature in your career, you're often going to rely on every bit of your business, your insurance, your business law, your accounting, your HR, like every one of those sort of tools in your business school toolkit, you're going to break out again. So it's like, take good notes, keep your book. Like you're going to be leaning on that at
Yeah.
some point.
And
Um,
one of the things that I have found is on like that diversity of information type note, um, other industries such as finance is still tightly related to the supply chain major here at App State. And so that it's not something that I'm as familiar with, but the finance industry, healthcare industry, um, there are a lot of supply chain functions, even if it's not specific to, like, most people just assume logistics. Um, the math, the software, the implementation of these things, how businesses work, what their business model is versus another's. Um, that's totally what I want to be exploring.
Well, to cap that off, if you consider that supply chain includes procurement and buying, and you get out of just warehousing and transportation function, then every business is in the business of taking something that's an input and converting it into an output, and that's got to be purchased. You got to pay for that input in some sort of way. So even if you're a film studio or a doctor's office or whatever, there's still buying that has to take place. So there is supply chain everywhere, that's for sure. All right, Caleb, I know you've probably been chomping on the bit there, ready to go on this one. So, short term, the next year or two, 5 to 10 out, and then what have you got big plans in place?
Sure. So I'm actually going to speak on supply chain plans, but also something really cool in my life that started this year that I'd like to share briefly. Supply chain. So I graduate this semester, graduate in May. I'm excited to graduate. I have a job lined up in Virginia with Ferguson Enterprises, who I interned for last summer, and I'm actually very, very excited to go work for them. Again, their leadership panel is fantastic, location's fantastic, and I'm just excited to get out and get real knowledge in this industry. I'd like to stay involved. One thing I've learned about supply chain clubs at university is there's a lot of gaps. There are a lot of things that could be done better, differently, or, Parker, you mentioned keep it simple. My dad always pushed the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. I think that could play a heavy role in a lot of places. So I'd love to stay involved in App State's Supply Chain Club. Nathan, I know the student media group. I think that's super awesome. I'd love to stay involved in that. I think anywhere I can stay involved in supply chain is super exciting beyond just the work atmosphere. What I want to talk about quickly, something personal for me. I don't know if you guys can tell based off my blinking. I blink 10 times for every one y'all do. So I have mild Tourette syndrome. And growing up, I never really did well with medication. I still don't. I don't take medicine for anything. And ice baths have become my meditation and my medicine. And I started a club, excuse the name, it's fun. I like funny names. It's called Frozen Nips Plunge Club. And we take cold plunges in the various rivers in Boone every week. And we did it through the winter. And cold plunges help me navigate life altogether, mental stress, physical well-being. If you can fight that cold water for 3 minutes and push your body to last for 8, not much else can mess with you throughout the day. And so I love spreading that to people. Whenever people come out and take a cold plunge, it's really nice to see someone's day get better too. So I look forward, we're 25 minutes away from the Atlantic in Virginia where I'm moving. So I look forward to being able to continue that out there and push that mental well-being for people who are stressed out and whatever it is that's stressing them out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It just feels like you are a builder and a creator, right? Like that's just
Definitely.
the natural role you're going to play in the world. So I'm excited to see where you take that with your career. And I would also encourage you to stay connected as you already plan on it. I did not go that route very well in my initial years after graduation. I was super head down working as my little operations analyst role or whatever it was I was. And I just kind of put myself in a cave there in my first 3 to 5 years. And honestly, it wasn't until I became a manager for the first time and I was responsible for a P&L and for recruiting and for sales and for everything that I realized, oh, I need other people. I can't just be in this cave here in this office. It requires a network and it requires being out and about. And so that was probably definitely where I dropped the ball, kind of moving out of college and into my first career job was not having that mentality or not having someone mentor me to say, stay plugged in. It will pay dividends and it's worthwhile. Let's talk a little bit about maybe advice. So from the perspective that you all are at, if you're thinking about high schoolers, folks that are thinking about studying supply chain or studying business or where to go to school, just words of advice for yourself a few years ago, what you would tell yourself. You want to go first, Parker?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me was it's okay to take a non-traditional route. So in my upbringing, college was projected to be the one and only choice. Now, I agree that college is helpful, but that not going to college immediately is what helped me ultimately come to college and get my degree. Um, so being open to things like military or trade school or work, just to gain that experience, I feel like puts your experience level years ahead of your peers. If they just come straight into college, so it's okay to take what I would call a non-traditional path, but also like go ask questions. Like if you're interested in something, don't let somebody tell you that you can't do this. So for me, when I found out that the job that I got as a material handler was actually an aerospace manufacturer, I was like, there ain't no way. That's really cool. And then once I, displayed effort and was consistent and reliable, opportunities came like nobody's business. And it's all about where you find purpose. And it's okay to figure that out. You don't have to have everything mapped out. It's okay to change plans. So that would be my advice. Be okay with change and know that there's more options than just one.
I'd have to say that I'm probably getting close to 40 podcast episodes in the book. And I would say probably about five. And again, these are all supply chain sort of professionals in some way or another. And I asked that question of what's your advice for students, or what would your advice be if you were a student today and wanted to be, in your vice president or CEO sort of role that you're in today. And you would be surprised with the number of times the answer comes back of, you don't have to go to college. Like that's like, and so I've had multiple discussions and multiple answers that's been the response. And so that's actually, it takes a little bit of courage because it's not the mainstream. It's not kind of how we're programmed, kind of growing up a lot of times.
Yeah.
So thanks for putting in
Yeah.
a word of
I
up
will
there.
say on that note as well, if there are folks out there that are interested in supply chain but aren't necessarily sure about obtaining a bachelor's, there are professional organizations such as ASCM and CSCMP that offer their own certifications and trainings on these things. And a lot of times companies will sponsor them, from what I have observed. So there is that option as well.
Great plug. Great plug.
Yes.
Caleb, thoughts, words of advice, things that you've kind of learned that you would kind
Sure.
of give to underclassmen today.
Sure. First thing, financial literacy. Whatever field you are in, become financially literate. Money's not everything, but it is important. And you can learn in books, you can learn on YouTube. Kind of goes for the same thing. My dad always also used to tell me people bleed the same blood as you. Don't be scared of anybody, regardless of their title. Don't be scared of people for any other reason. Typically, the only reason people seem unapproachable is because you think they're unapproachable. Um, so just try. And another thing to kind of go with that, I guess that entrepreneurial mindset, don't be scared, and don't think that you need to have all the answers to start something. Honestly, what I found the most difficult part of starting a business was starting the business instead of reading 5 books about how to start a business. At some point, you just got to start pushing buttons and accept there will be late nights, accept it will be hard, but accept that it also will be very worth it in the end.
Awesome. I feel like there's one question and there's one topic in everyone's mind in the world, and definitely in supply chain. And I would love to kind of get y'all's quick take on it and what you're hearing before we kind of wrap this up. And that is, what are y'all hearing or being taught or whatever when it comes to AI in supply chain? Like, I can't go to a conference, I can't go to a happy hour, I can't do anything. No one can do anything without being beat up with AI. So, just 30 seconds or so. What are y'all hearing in school, in class, and your internships? Like, what's the take on AI from y'all's perspective?
A lot of people are scared of it. A lot of people worry about it, which is warranted. And it can be super intelligent AI, especially, can be kind of scary. But like generative AI or more, no, I don't want to call it simplistic because it's far from it. But artificial intelligence can be extremely visible, especially in supply chain, things like visibility and things like automating processes to create less human involvement. It's not necessarily replacing jobs as much as it is creating new ones. And that's my opinion.
All right, Parker.
Yeah. So my take on this is, um, obviously, when most folks think of AI, they think of, ChatGPT, OpenAI, that kind of thing. For me, I more so have realized that it's more so the machine learning side of things. So I really like math, and I really like knowing forecasting. Forecasting is something that I feel like I'm really interested in and want to keep learning about. And it turns out that's not too different from AI because it's machine learning. This past summer, I worked at Heiko Americas in Greensboro as a capacity forecast planner. And I can remember going to the NC State Library because it was the closest one with me with textbooks that I could get access to. And they were on topics such as neural networks, which guess what AI is? Partially neural networks, right? And seeing how that ties in mathematically to the day-to-day operations, whether it be just a management dashboard that needs to be built or something like that. Any type of insight that could potentially give you awareness of what you might have missed and not seen. That's where I feel like AI is used in the industries today.
So I'll point you toward podcast number 23 with my friend Anant Jain. He has like his PhD in something really smart. I forget, but he was talking about he was in school in the 90s doing neural networks and machine learning for planning and forecasting. So like not a new concept, right? So it's now just in the civilian sector and very widespread. Well, hey, I appreciate both of you guys coming on and sharing your life stories, what got you into supply chain, what excites you about it. Maybe the next chapter we'll unpack like what scares you about it, but we'll do that one next time. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Just quick last word from each of you. Parker, real quick.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being on the podcast. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me. I was trying to think of something witty to say, but I couldn't. Thank you.
Just give us that three slogan. We throw it.
It was
mow it.
I can't remember the order of it, but it was got leaves, we'll blow it, got trash, we'll throw it, got grass, we'll mow it.
That's it.
Camel City Hall and Landscaping.
That's it, man. All right. Yep. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your semester.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.